Welcome to Wealth Untethered, your guide to the principles and mindset of a genuinely wealthy life. This podcast explores universal laws, principles, and strategies that lead to wealth and fulfillment. We delve into topics like investment, cash flow, business, estate and legacy planning, longevity, health, science, and more. All in an attempt to examine and challenge your mindset about what's possible for you. To learn more about Wealth Untethered, visit our website, wealthuntethered.com. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this show. Michael Isom, we live in an amazing world. I look at the times that we get to experience compared to, let's say, 150 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, what we know about history.
Crazy.
It's incredible. At the same time, I look at this stark contrast to all the pessimistic news, energy, views when you turn on the television, when you open up social media, right? It's a really interesting time to be alive. But we've come together because we're friends, we're colleagues, and we share some very similar views about life, about wealth. And we felt compelled to take the experiences that we have with clients, experiences that we have ourselves, that we've had for multiple decades now, and bring them to a wider audience in the form of a podcast and videos. There's no cost to it. Because we've discovered patterns, we've discovered principles, we've discovered things that work. And I think there are principles associated with life, even though life is different right now compared to any time in history, and it's going to be different tomorrow and different the next day. There's some universal laws, universal principles, universal mindsets that have been discovered that could be taken to new environments, dynamic environments for people to experience an even more wealthy life.
That we've gained clarity on, that we're clear about in our own life, that we want to share with you, that clarity for you to have in your own life. Like, I totally agree. Like, now more than ever before, longevity and health and science and technology and advancements, and because it's advancing at such a high degree, it's going to continue to advance at an even higher degree. And that's going to build on top of that and on top of that and on top of that. Like, there's more abundance today than there have ever been. And there'll be even more tomorrow. Yet, just like you were saying, these limiting beliefs and these limiting mindsets and the fear and the doubt and the worry, it's almost like the world's going to come to an end, which is the furthest thing from it. Because of the advancements that we have today more than ever before and the access to information. And so, yeah, Patrick, I love getting together with you. I love that our wives, well, maybe I love that our wives like to be together. They're off shopping right now. Yeah, we trust them. That's great. But I love that we're able to get together and that we're able to go off on these subjects because it fulfills us. It feeds us. And at a deep level, and frankly, I'm excited to share with the listeners Wealth Untethered. Like, it has such a deep meaning to you and I in our conversations. Now we're putting a name around it. We're putting together this podcast to share with all of you. And frankly, we're doing it out of self-interest because it fulfills us.
Yep.
It fulfills us to do this. We gain clarity in our own life, and hopefully you'll gain some clarity in your life to be able to see that abundance, to be able to see this scarcity, to be able to identify it at an even deeper level than even ever before, but to bring to you information, tools, strategies, and motivation. And I just absolutely love this, Patrick. And I credit you for coming up with this, and I guess us together. But living wealthy regardless of circumstances, regardless of what the news and the media and this or that or technology or advancements or not advancements, whatever, but to be able to go internal with that thought process and with that mindset, and to go inside of ourselves, for each of you to go inside of yourself, to be able to live wealthy regardless of what's going on around you or what's going on immediately within your home and your own life. And so, yeah, it is internal.
So this is a belief system. Again, this is our uh what we have in common, what we've discovered, different life experiences, different books, obviously different personalities. But at the same time, we've come to this conclusion that there are specific principles, there's tools, there's strategies, and obviously there's motivation through stories or just conveying the belief that it's possible for anyone to achieve a level of wealth and do it on a daily basis. And we really believe that. So that's the mission of the podcast.
Yeah. So where are you tethering yourself? Where in your life, like what mindsets it's in your life are working, which ones are not working, and to raise
Mm.
your awareness around that. So as you're listening to us, as we're discovering and unfolding this in front of you, we challenge you, the listeners, just like Patrick and I challenge each other in these conversations that we have. We're challenging you also to take a look at that.
Because right now, I think that it's safe to say that we all tether success to something. We're naturally inclined to say, okay, well, if I get this job, right, then this will happen, or I'll feel this way. When I make this much money, when I drive this car, when I live in this neighborhood, right, I think we tether progress to specific things that happen in the external world. Okay, and I think there's good things around, milestones in life, milestones that represent growth. At the same time, when we start to attach circumstances that we don't have yet, it affects where we're at right now until we live in that circumstance,
Yeah.
right? It's almost to say that, okay, you're not wealthy, you're not happy, you're not successful right now.
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to feel that way, you have to have all these things. So I
Yeah.
think society has programmed us to say, okay, here are the benchmarks of like what it means to be successful. Here are the benchmarks. Here are the things you have to do in order to be wealthy. Just as much as I'm saying, like, I'm not saying these things are bad in and of themselves, but at the same time, there's so many different environmental factors. Every individual is different, where that there may be a path for you that aligns with what society teaches us that we have to do to be wealthy, but there may be another path, right? And I believe that all human beings are unique. We have certain amazing attributes and characteristics that sometimes get suppressed, right? Because we have to like follow this checklist that society has created for us.
Yeah. Yeah. So as you were saying that, I was thinking about Dan Sullivan, a strategic coach, and he talks about the horizon.
Mm.
And it's if the horizon is the target, like it's always going to be out there. It's this ever moving way out there, way out there, way out there. And I'm not saying don't set targets, but if it's constantly moving like that, then we're measuring against something that we're never actually going to have in our life.
Because think about it, life is in the moment, right? The future doesn't exist yet. The past is gone. Like reality is now. Okay? So attaching again, this is why this title is significant and profound to us, right? Is because if you're attaching wealth to something that doesn't exist yet, you're living right now in a state of unsuccess, unhappiness, and not wealthy. And that's I
And how
feel
is that?
destructive. And
How
it
does that
doesn't
feel?
work, right? And again, we've come to these conclusions because we've been giving people financial advice for several decades, right? I got really fortunate of getting into financial services industry when the internet became kind of a thing and doing virtual business was
Mm,
possible,
yeah.
right? And I got my team and I have brought on thousands of clients around the world, obviously all 50 states, United States, but we've been able to like see multiple walks of life, really wealthy, paycheck to paycheck, young, old, divorced, married, kids, no kids, like all over the place. So many different types of clients with different backgrounds, but we've discovered patterns. Right, you've done the same thing. Your journey in financial services has been much different than mine. At the same time, we've come to similar conclusions, right? That has led us to where we're at today, providing the information, the tools, the strategies, the motivation so that you listeners can learn from what we've experienced and learn from what others have experienced, maybe to circumvent some of the challenges that people sometimes have to face in order to learn the same lessons. Hopefully, you can use this information to gain happiness, gain wealth, live a better life without having to go through those challenges.
Yeah, that's great, Patrick. And yeah, like you said, I started
Mm.
my professional career in 1993 selling cell phones at the age of 22, making over $20,000 a month selling cell phones, which subjected me to all sorts of things financially. And so that was in 1993. So in 2000, I got into the financial services industry out of a desire to learn about money and finance. And in the beginning, money for me was about the next dollar and then having the next thing. It wasn't this mindset. It quickly started turning to that. So, yeah, it's identifying the values and the principles and the things that are working versus the things that are not working, and having that opportunity to, like you said, work literally with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients across the nation from all walks of life, from all businesses to all careers, and to be actually see the application of what's working and what's not working. But you reminded me of this earlier in preparing for this inaugural podcast episode numero uno of what wealth
Mm.
really is and how much of it is a state of mind. And we wrote down that it's 80% is the psychology of the state of mind, and 20% is the mechanics.
And mechanics are the strategies, the financial products, the tools. But again, wealth, I think, is mindset, right? And again, going to the tethering, right? Attaching certain circumstances, certain things to feeling wealthy or feeling successful, right? It's that feeling in the end, right? It's the personal experience, the personal fulfillment that comes from that, or what we think is going to come from that, right? We make guesses. So if it's something that we don't have in our life, a car, a job, an income level, a bank account balance, we make assumptions that will feel a certain way if we had those things.
Yeah.
And we attach that. But when we attach that, we simultaneously say to ourselves, right, that you don't have that now. Therefore, you're not wealthy, you're not happy, you're, poor, you're unsuccessful. And I think that's really where people start to decline, right? Even though we live in this miraculous world, people are, they're depressed, they're unhappy, they fight, there's self-harm, right? They harm others. Right? There's a lot of bad stuff that happens when a person doesn't feel successful, doesn't feel happy, doesn't feel fulfilled, doesn't feel wealthy. But again, we're operating off of the assumption that everybody is pursuing wealth. They're pursuing the best life they can. They're pursuing fulfillment. They're pursuing satisfaction. They're pursuing the same end results. However, we're trying to talk about the patterns that we've discovered as financial professionals. The typical pattern we've been taught by society is not the only recipe. In fact, it is a recipe that does not really work. And it's interesting for us to say that because we've bought into it,
Yeah.
right? We've tethered our success, and the clients that we meet with have tethered their success to their job title, to the amount of money they have in their 401k, to the house that they live in, to the vacations they get to go on, to the lifestyle they live in. But we have seen firsthand through our experiences that people that have those things have even more than those things are still unhappy, still don't consider themselves wealthy, and still live, which is right now in a state that is not fulfilling for them.
Yeah, 100%. And good news, you, me, all of you listening, everyone out there today, we have everything inside of us to have this incredible wealthy life. It's all within each one of us. That's the good news. So I'm the problem. I love this. It's so empowering for me to identify in my own life that I'm the problem, but good news, I'm also the solution. And for you listening, you're the problem. It's not the government. It's not markets. It's not inflation. It's not your advisors. It's not your spouse. It's not your kids. It's nobody else but yourself. And the good news is that you're also the solution. It's so empowering to think that way, and for each one of us to think that way versus what would the media have you say? Well, it's Trump's fault, or it's Biden's fault, or it's this person, it's somebody else. It's not, oh yeah, it's not your own fault. No, that's not being accountable in the situation.
I think that's again, as we get into how we're going to take this philosophy. I mean, I think this inaugural episode is really to communicate to you why we're doing this, the purpose, what the podcast is about, what you would gain from it, and obviously the gain is going to come from us taking the experiences that we've had, but also what we've developed as either a series of questions, a series of tools, things that you can take and approach whatever challenge that you're currently facing or will face in the future and turn it into a means to create an even better life for yourself, for your family. But it all starts really with you. It's self awareness, it's self acceptance, right? And it's also taking responsibility for your life. If you can't get past that domino, it's going to be very challenging to use any of the things that we're going to present in these podcast episodes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It doesn't take much, Patrick, for me to mention off-road racing or to talk about it. But I grew up in the motorcycle shops. My first job was seventh grade at Cycletown Yamaha. I don't know why I remember all these things, but it's 333 West St. George Boulevard, the address. But from seventh grade through my first year of college is in the motorcycle industry. And so in my adult life, I had this desire to race off road and to create this off road racing team. And it had such a great time doing it. I'm not doing it anymore. I stopped that just over a year ago. But in the off road racing, these long desert races, one of our longest ones was from Las Vegas, Nevada to Reno, Nevada. I'm in this off-road Can-Am Maverick side by side. For those of you that are off-road fans and know what a Can-Am Maverick is, it's a side by side where there's a steering wheel, and I had someone sitting next to me. It's a four-wheel car of sorts. But in off-road racing, we would race from Vegas to Reno off-road, and it was a 540-mile race. And we'd take off on the line one by one every 30 seconds. And there'd be a whole long line of cars behind us when we would take off. And if I were to focus on the cars behind me versus what's ahead of me, I would always be racing behind me versus racing in front of me. And so in off-road racing, to be successful, it was this mindset of racing in front of me versus racing behind me, not worrying about knowing the people that are behind me, but not worrying or thinking about them, but focusing on what's in front of me and moving forward. And when I wasn't having success in the off-road racing, I was tethering myself to this belief of, oh, they're going to catch me. And hey, let me know if they're coming up in our rearview mirror. And if they get to me, let me know so I can pull over. And man, we'd go so much slower by doing that versus what's it going to take to catch the guy in front of me? How can I get around this person to get to the next person? And so in off-road racing, it's all about racing forward versus behind me.
Well, one of the main lessons I've learned and continue to learn is similar to that. I grew up in a household of boys in Central Connecticut. We were all close in age. My dad coached ice hockey for 43 years,
Mm.
and I grew up at the rink, and I learned how to play hockey. I learned how to fight, learn how to be aggressive, learn how to from a really young age, right? And what I did
You're a
is
lover,
I'm a
not
what?
you're a lover, not a fighter, Patrick.
Maybe I think I am now, but I'll actually get to that. But I think sometimes our life circumstances, right, it creates a dominant way in which we show up to life. Okay. And it's I think similar in a sense, right? Rear view mirror is a way in which you can race. It's a way in which you can drive, right? You drive based on what's behind you, not what's in front of you. Okay. So I learned to show up to life and navigate life, whether it's business or my education or my pursuit in the professional world or whatever. I learned a dominant way through my upbringing, right? And what's fulfilling to me in business, like I've accomplished a lot of stuff in business. It's been really fulfilling. At the same time, I've experienced a lack of fulfillment at times during my marriage and with my kids, right? Because I grew up with boys. I have two daughters who are teenagers right now. Try using the tactics of what boys think that how things should happen, like the masculine energy, right? Try bringing that to a feminine relationship. It does not work out very well at all.
Yeah.
Right. So I learned, right, in business, there are certain things that work for me, but I also learned there are things that weren't working for me. Right. When I pushed, right, when I should have been leading,
Mm.
right, when I like worked hard and put in long hours where I should have given grace to a team member,
Mm.
right? When I've taken like that archetype of like go, fight, win home, where my kids needed an empathetic father, where my wife needed a complementary support role, it just didn't work. So that's another, I think, interesting thing is we bring certain parts of us, we bring our experiences, we bring like what's worked in certain areas of life, and we try to bring it to new circumstances. Right? That's another thing is inside of us, right, is something that works for a given situation, whether it's business, It could be that lover side, right? Where that you may have grown up with incredibly loving and empathetic parents in an environment that was super loving, and you bring that to the world. But if you bring that to business, what's going to happen? You're going to be a pushover. You're going to be taken
Yeah.
advantage
Yeah.
of. So the thing is,
Trouble.
it's like, again, I think wealth sometimes, and the reason why we believe it's inside of us, right, is that there are certain parts of our personality that are dominant, and we brought them and achieved success in our life. But there's other parts of us too that exist, but may have been suppressed, that need to show up to our marriage, that need to show up to our kids. You may not think that this has anything to do with wealth. It totally does, because in the end, you can have a ton of money, you could have success in your bank accounts and in your business, and you could have completely horrible personal relationships. That to me is not a recipe for wealth. At least it isn't for me, right? So we're here to take like, okay, what does wealth really mean? Which for me, it's fulfillment, it's extracting fulfillment, it's extracting joy from all the areas of life right now. Now, it seems like super utopian, never possible. I think we're always working on this. But the idea is like we've discovered some patterns. We've also discovered a formula, right? Which we're actually going to introduce on the next episode of the podcast, but a formula which is essentially a way to introspect and discover what's working, what's not working. What's the challenge that's in your way? And then what are a series of questions you can ask yourself, things to do in order to discover like, oof, here's an opportunity, and then apply that opportunity and make that adjustment to your life, which ultimately is going to give you even better results.
100%. 100%. I'm super excited about this. I hope that you guys will gain introspection from this, and that you'll challenge yourself, that you'll look within your own life and look at areas that are working or not working, just like Patrick and I are doing. But more than anything, and why we named it Wealth Untethered, is that you'll identify areas where you're tethered to certain mindsets and certain belief systems that are not working, that are binding you and shackling you in your life, and to be able to break free from that.
Yep. And that again is what I just mentioned as what is wealth, at least for me, right? And I know it's that case for a lot of others who have gone through challenging times and experienced what they really want, right? But it's extracting that joy, extracting that fulfillment right now from life.
Yeah.
Not if things happen a certain way,
Regardless of circumstances.
regardless of circumstances.
Yeah.
And these are skills that I think you have to adopt, right? But they're also tools, there's information, there's motivation to do it. And that's what our goal is for this podcast, is to bring those to you.
Yeah. Super excited about it, Patrick. Definitely.
So I think a good takeaway from this podcast is before we get into the next episode, go to our website, wealthuntethered.com. You can subscribe for notifications of future episodes. Okay. You can also just ask yourself the question, which is, what is wealth for you? Right? What is a wealthy life for you? Those are questions I think can really bring up some thoughts and awareness of what you really want as a next level in your life.
Yeah, and it can be a dollar amount. It's certainly, it's not mutually exclusive, right? It is the money. It is, what does that money mean to you in your life, and how do you want that to show up in your life, like today and in the future? And our daughter Kennedy and Corbin, they made us grandparents, Wendy and I, and it's the most incredible thing. And so that's evolving, and in your life, it will continue to evolve as far as what's most important to you. But it's being deliberate about identifying that versus having somebody else identify that for you.
Cool. So thank you for your support in this first podcast. It was awesome to kind of communicate our thoughts in a relatively
Why we're doing this,
concise way, and why and the purpose behind it. But next episode, we're going to dive into what we call the Infinity Tool, which is a diagnostic. It's an assessment. It's a series of things you can do in order to discover opportunities to create even more wealth in your life. So make sure you tune into the next episode.
Looking forward to it.